Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 6 for 6, Season 4, Episode 9. And we are talking about Week 6 of the college football season, ladies and gentlemen. We've been getting a lot of 500s in our picks for 6 for 6. And that continues from last week's episode where we went 3 for 3, ladies and gentlemen. We are just having a rut of just getting games just not going our way for some of those games. Like, we pick some really great upsets, and then when we have a team that should win, they lose. It's like, it's mind-blowing. I don't know how I do it. I don't know how I'm averaging about like 500 for my picks for the college football season. But we have some ups and ups here and there. But our record for season 4 right now, ladies and gentlemen, is 25, 21, and 1. So we're still on the up and up with a lot of our picks and selections, and keeping the losses to a minimum as best we can. But it's no easy task. Hopefully this week, week 6, we get 6 correct picks for college football. I think this can't capitalize anything else better for 6 for 6. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the show on the road. First up, ladies and gentlemen, a nice mix-up in the college football in the ACC world. We got Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. Teams are very closely evenly matched, but the percentage of wins that is coming from ESPN, ladies and gentlemen, Virginia Tech has a 76% chance of victory compared to Wake Forest's 23%. I like Virginia Tech in this one, even though they lost to Vanderbilt pretty badly, 44-20. In South Carolina, 24-11. But they beat NC State by 2 points, 23-21. Now, Wake Forest, on the other hand, lost to Georgia Tech in overtime. That beat an overrated Clemson. But then they lost to NC State. So I like the edge in this matchup. If you look at the matchup for the NC State portion to it, I like Virginia Tech to squeak this one out, but it's definitely going to be close. So you can catch Wake Forest and Virginia Tech, ladies and gentlemen, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the CW Network. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we got some Big Ten action for you. We got Michigan State versus Nebraska. Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1. Both teams are 3-1, and they have an 0-1 conference record right now, ladies and gentlemen. Michigan State lost to USC 45-31, but Nebraska loses to Michigan, who's ranked, keep that in mind, 30-27. So that's Nebraska's notable loss, playing close to Michigan. But if you look at, ladies and gentlemen, Michigan State, they struggled with Boston College in an overtime victory, 42-40. So we don't know what this Michigan State team has to offer. But if you look at the percentage chance of victory, ladies and gentlemen, Nebraska has an 86% chance of victory. I like Nebraska in this one. They're at home, coming off of a tough loss to Michigan. They're going to try to make a statement in this one to try to make a nice little Big Ten campaign push to try to get into the Big Ten championship game. If not, finding a nice, spot in the college football playoffs if they can run their table efficiently. But you can catch Michigan State, Nebraska, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1. And I have Nebraska winning it. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have Air Force, Navy, Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on CBS. Ladies and gentlemen, Navy is 4-0. They're going to try to do the unthinkable. Run the table and get in the college football playoffs. That's all you got to do. Find a way to win out, and they might have a conversation in the college football bid, depending on how the committee views Navy. Taking care of a few opponents here in the mix, ladies and gentlemen. They took care of Tulsa, 42-23. They beat Rice 21-13. UAB 38-24. But if you look at Air Force, they struggle against Hawaii, but dropped 35 points on Hawaii. Struggle with Boise State. They dropped 37 on them, but lost to 49. Utah State put 49 on them, scoring about 30. So if you're looking at like Air Force, ladies and gentlemen, they're a high-powered offense that likes to score a lot of points, where Navy kind of grinds you out and down and beats you to a pulp. I like Navy in this one, and being in Annapolis, Navy continue going 5-0 in this selection, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Navy, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time on CBS. And I have Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Clemson versus North Carolina, Saturday, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time on ESPN. Ladies and gentlemen, Clemson has come to a rocky start, losing to LSU, losing to Georgia Tech, losing to Syracuse, but being Troy. This Clemson team is struggling this year, ladies and gentlemen. They can find a way to stay around, but it's not enough to get the dub where it matters the most, ladies and gentlemen. However, North Carolina is beating the small teams, losing to the big teams. I think this streak is going to continue where they're going to lose to Clemson in this matchup, even though North Carolina's at home and they have Bill Belichick. I think Dabo Swinney is going to try to turn Clemson around right now. Out of the picture for the ACC championship game with 3 losses, but you never know on how the ACC will shake out. But Dabo Swinney is going to need to turn it around so he doesn't go on a 3-game losing streak. So give me Clemson to win this one on the road in this environment. Clemson, North Carolina, Saturday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time on ESPN. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, in our number 2 slot is some ranked opponents. We got Vanderbilt, number 16 in the nation, versus number 10, Alabama, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time on ABC. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanderbilt is 5-0 in this matchup, ladies and gentlemen, and they beat Alabama in the past, but they go into Tuscaloosa. Not an easy task for Vanderbilt to do, but they can try to do and shock the world in this one. But, ladies and gentlemen, the tide is starting to roll. They took care of Georgia. They took care of Wisconsin. After, at the beginning of the season, we didn't know what this Alabama team was doing. But I think we all know when Alabama loses, they find a way to start rolling up wins together. The tide starts to change, and then they start finding ways to win games that seem impossible, but snatch the jaws of defeat. But Vanderbilt, ladies and gentlemen, take care of South Carolina convincingly, 31-7, but also took care of Utah State, 55-35 in this matchup, and they took care of Virginia Tech, 44-20. So this Vanderbilt squad is trying to make a statement in the SEC, showing that they belong and trying to make a shot at the SEC title game, ladies and gentlemen. But Alabama is here to spoil their fate in Tuscaloosa. So give me Alabama to win this matchup as they roll through Vanderbilt onto their next game after this. So you can catch Vanderbilt, number 16 nation versus Alabama, number 10 in the nation, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time on ABC. First, before we do reveal the game of the week, let's get a quick recap before we reveal our game of the week. Ladies and start slot if I decides to work for me in my favor. In our 6th slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have Wake Forest versus Virginia Tech, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific time on the CW network, and I have Virginia Tech winning it. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have Michigan State versus Nebraska, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific time on FS1, and I have Nebraska winning it. Next up after that, ladies and gentlemen, in our 4th slot, we have Air Force versus Navy, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time on CBS, and I have Navy winning this matchup. After that, in our 3rd slot, we have Clemson versus North Carolina, Saturday, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time on ESPN, and I have Clemson winning this matchup. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, in our number 2 slot, number 16 Vanderbilt versus number 10 Alabama, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time on ABC. And now all you've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen, the game of the week. Number 3 Miami versus number 18 Florida State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on ABC. Miami has been rolling through their schedule, taking care of Florida 26-7, taking care of UCF 49-12, beating a smaller school 45-3, and then beating Notre Dame in week 1 of 27-24, where Florida State gets upset at Virginia 46-38 and a double overtime loss. But they've been beating the teams. They took care of Alabama. this Florida State is trying to be hungry and trying to spoil Miami. But I think Miami has a way to win these games and put up points. But this is definitely going to be a high-flying game. Definitely a game that comes down to the wire. But I think Miami squeaks out the victory. Miami has a 65% chance of victory to win this matchup. So it's all looking good in Miami's favor, trying to make a statement showing that they are the third best team in the country, if not even better. But we have to see how they fare in Florida State, at Florida State, ladies and gentlemen. But you can catch, and also, ladies and gentlemen, we have Miami winning this one. So you can catch ranked 3 Miami versus number 18 in the nation, Florida State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ABC. Without further ado, quick recap, and we'll get you on out of here so you can enjoy your college football week coming up. Week on our 6th slot, ladies and gentlemen, we got Wake Forest versus Virginia Tech Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the CW Network, and we have Virginia Tech winning it. Next up, Michigan State versus Nebraska Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on FS1, and I have Nebraska winning it. Next up in our 4th slot, we have Air Force versus Navy Saturday, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on CBS, and I have Navy winning it. In our 3rd slot, ladies and gentlemen, if this decides to work for me, we have Clemson versus North Carolina Saturday, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, and I have Clemson winning it. In our number 2 slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have Vanderbilt, number 16 nation, versus Alabama, number 10 in nation, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ABC, and I have the Tide rolling on. After that, ladies and gentlemen, our number 1 game of the week, you have number 3 Miami versus number 18 Florida State Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ABC, and I have the Miami Hurricanes winning this one, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, our last week episode, ladies and gentlemen, we went 3 for 3, so we're trying to turn it around this week to improve our odds. Maybe get another 4 for 2 or a 5 for 1 or the perfect, ladies and gentlemen, 6 picks for 6 games is what we strive for here on this network and on this show. Like I said, our season 4 record, ladies and gentlemen, is 25, 21, and 1. Thank you so much for watching to this week's episode of 6 for 6, and enjoy week 6 of the college football season. We'll catch you next time here on 6 for 6. So long for now. Bye-bye.